Welcome to Catholic News World.
Welcome to Catholic News World. Please subscribe to our channel. My name is Steph. Here are this week's breaking news headlines.
Prayers have been answered as the kidnapped German missionary priest, Father Hans-Joachim Lori was released in Mali, Africa. The missionary Father Lori is a member of the White Fathers, African missionaries, who was kidnapped in Mali on Sunday, November 20, 2022. A year after his abduction, the missionary was released on Sunday, November 26. Agenzia Fides reports that the circumstances of his release are still unclear. Father Lori's release was announced on Sunday by a representative of the Malian government and two representatives of the Archdiocese of Bamako, who wished to remain anonymous. The release was reportedly negotiated directly by the German government, and the missionary, after being released by his captors and handed over to the Malian authorities, was immediately taken into custody by representatives of the German authorities and taken to Germany overnight on a special flight. Germany still maintains its own contingent of soldiers in Mali as part of the UN peacekeeping mission, which is expected to cease its activities by the end of the year, as demanded by the military that came to power in a coup in 2020. The 66-year-old Father Hans-Joachim Lori has lived in Mali for more than 30 years, where he taught, among other things, at the Islamic Christian Training Institute and was responsible for the Faith and Encounter Center in Hamdallah. On the day of the kidnapping, the missionary was supposed to celebrate Mass in the Calaban Kura parish. His car was parked outside his home, and investigators later found the priest's severed cross necklace next to his vehicle. No claim of responsibility was made for the abduction, but diplomatic and security sources attributed it to an al-Qaeda-linked group. Father Lori is the second German to be released in the Sahel in less than a year, following the release in December 2022 of aid worker Jorg Lang, who was kidnapped in 2018 in western Niger, on the border with Mali. A number of foreign hostages, including a South African and an Italian couple with their son, remain held in the Sahel. A nun in Gaza begs for peace. We want peace, no more violence because people have already suffered enough. This is certainly the worst and bloodiest. We want peace because there is no winner with war. A Catholic nun sheltering with over 700 people at the Catholic Church in Gaza is begging for peace. Sister Nabila Salah, a member of the Congregation of the Sisters of the Holy Rosary, gave an interview to Asia News. This nun, who has been in Gaza for 13 years, said that there is devastation everywhere, everything is destroyed. She explained that the Christians tried to return to their homes, but they are all destroyed. There is nothing left standing and the suffering is everywhere, in every street and every family. There is the danger of dying all the times. Food, medicines, and fuel are lacking. She laments that there is no safe place from north to south. Of the four wars, this is the bloodiest. There is a little hope for the future, especially for children. She appeals for a Christmas of peace. I have heard so many stories of mothers looking for their children after the bombings. The stories are terrible. Like that of the elderly Christian woman, shot by an Israeli sniper, whose body was recovered by some young people during a lull in the fighting, who buried what was left of her, praying. There are also hard stories to tell, too many like this. During the truce, Christians have taken the opportunity to go and see their homes. No one has returned happy because not one is left. They are all reduced to rubble or otherwise unusable, this according to Sister Navila, speaking to Asian News. The truce has allowed us to sleep a little more and visit the few shops still open to buy some winter clothes. She visited various parts of the Gaza Strip during the partial ceasefire. It is a tragedy everywhere, she said on the phone, despite the difficulties in communication and the frequent interruptions of the line. The temporary pause in the fighting was extended at the last moment by Israel and Hamas for another 24 hours, even though extremists in the Israeli cabinet, Ministers Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, threatened to quit and cause the government to collapse if the anti-Hamas operation is not resumed. We can feel less tensions, said the Egyptian-born nun, who has been in Gaza for 13 years, but the signs of bombings and 58 days of war are clearly visible. At least the pause allowed us to sleep a little more. We were able to visit the few shops still open, those who could bought some winter clothes, which no one had, to shield from the cold that is beginning to be felt here. The needs are great, Sister Navila explained, especially food, clothing, gas for heating, and to run power generators. The nun is also the principal of the School of the Sisters of the Rosary of Jerusalem, which was destroyed in the bombing, in Tel al-Hawa, the largest in Gaza with 1,250 students. Inside, we have a well, but without electricity, we can't draw water for washing, to meet the minimum needs for personal hygiene. There is an atmosphere of great sadness and fear, only partially appeased by the pause. We try to think about the future, beyond the war, Sister Navila noted, but here there are no more houses, no schools, no work and no prospects, especially for young people, children. The Latin parish has done a lot to help and the church has offered shelter to many, nearly 700 Gazans taken in by the Holy Family Parish, but there is no safe place from north to south. Now, we don't know what will happen, said the nun, but everyone is still afraid of war and what could happen in the coming days. Many victims are very young, children, even among those who attended the Christian school, many people died, like the two who were pulled out of the rubble by their father. Pope Francis calls them every day by phone. The closeness of Pope Francis is very important. Almost every day he calls the parish or the sisters to get information, pray, show the solidarity of the church with people in Gaza, Christian and non-Christian. Those phone calls help us, Sister Navila noted. We want peace, no more violence because people have already suffered enough. We have experienced 4 wars and this is certainly the worst and bloodiest. We want peace because there is no winner with war. Finally, we all hope and pray for the arrival of medicines because a tragedy is also unfolding in terms of healthcare, food and aid must be guaranteed. We hope to celebrate a Christmas of peace, especially for our children. Many news outlets are posting that Pope Francis has reportedly decided to revoke Cardinal Raymond Burke's subsidized Vatican apartment and cardinal salary. This is according to AP, Reuters, and the Jesuit-run America magazine. If true, this is the second of such actions against an American prelate this month. However, a source who spoke to CNS said his understanding was that Pope Francis was not planning to evict Cardinal Burke from his Vatican-owned apartment, but that he did plan to ask the cardinal to start paying rent. Pope Francis apparently told a meeting of the heads of Vatican offices last week that he was moving against Burke because he was a source of disunity in the church, said one of the participants at the November 20th meeting. The participant spoke on condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to reveal the contents of the encounter. The Pope reportedly said he was removing Burke's privileges of having a subsidized Vatican apartment and his retired cardinal salary because he was using the privileges against the church, said another person's source. That person also spoke on condition of anonymity because he wasn't authorized to reveal the details. A Vatican salary is around 5,000 to 6,000 euros a month, with a spacious rent-free Vatican apartment of over 400 square meters, close to 5,000 square feet. Burke has not received any notification of measures being taken, his secretary said in a text message Tuesday to the Associated Press. The Pillar wrote that they have confirmed that there was a Vatican meeting last week, at which Pope Francis discussed a punitive measure pertaining to Cardinal Burke's stipend and apartment, mentioning specifically that Cardinal Burke has been a source of his disunity in the church. It was not clear to our sources close to the situation whether the measure would include both apartment and stipend. The Pillar has also confirmed that Burke has not been informed directly of the decision. Cardinal Burke is a 75-year-old canon lawyer whom Francis had removed as the Vatican's High Court Justice in 2014, and made Burke the cardinal patron of the Knights of Malta, a prestigious role. He has since become one of the most outspoken critics of the Pope. The papal biographer, Austin Iverly wrote, "I met with Pope Francis on the afternoon of November 27th. It was a short meeting because of his lung inflammation, which meant it took him some effort to speak. The following evening his trip to Dubai was cancelled because it had not improved enough. In the course of our conversation, Francis told me he had decided to remove Cardinal Burke's cardinal privileges, his apartment and salary, because he had been using those privileges against the church. He told me that while the decision wasn't a secret, he didn't intend a public announcement, but earlier that day, Monday, it had been leaked." Iverly also noted, "A cardinal, in his oath, promises obedience to Blessed Peter in the person of the Supreme Pontiff. On 2 occasions, Burke has joined other cardinals in issuing formal questions to the Pontiff, known as a dubia, asking him to clarify questions of doctrine that upset some traditionalists. In the first, they asked Francis to clarify his outreach to divorced and civilly remarried Catholics, and the second, they asked whether same-sex couples could receive church blessings, and received a conditional response. Then, on the eve of Pope Francis' synod, Burke presided over a type of counter-synod, of sorts near Peter's Square. There, Burke delivered a rebuke of Francis' vision of a synodality, as well as his overall reform project for the Church. It's unfortunately very clear that the invocation of the Holy Spirit by some has the aim of bringing forward an agenda that is more political and human than ecclesial and divine, Burke told the conference titled The Synodal Babel. When questioned about word of Pope Francis' decision, Vatican spokesman Matteo Bruni didn't deny the reports but referred questions to Burke. "I don't have anything particular to say about that," Bruni told reporters. "Please pray for Pope Francis, Cardinal Burke and all clergy." A Catholic bishop has revealed that the army in Myanmar has attacked and occupied a cathedral pastoral center that was being used as a refuge for displaced people. A Catholic pastoral center attached to the cathedral in Loika, Myanmar, that has served as a refuge of displaced people for months as part of the ongoing civil war, has been attacked and occupied by the Burmese army. This was reported by Bishop Celso Basho of Loika, the capital of Kaya State in eastern Myanmar. According to a report by Agenzia Fides, even holy sites, the bishop said, were not spared from military operations, at a time when the military junta was struggling to wage war on the ground. The Burmese army tried to take the Christ the King Cathedral complex 3 times, he reports. As a local bishop, I, together with the priests, tried to convince the military generals of the importance of the religious sites and asked them to leave the place to spare, where displaced people are also welcomed. However, on the night of November 26, the military deliberately fired artillery shells at the community center several times, hitting the roof of the pastoral center's chapel. The ceiling was destroyed by artillery shells. For security reasons, in consultation with the priests, we decided to leave the pastoral center. Shortly before our departure yesterday, November 27, 50 soldiers came and occupied the building to use it as a base and shelter. About 300,000 people live in Kaya State, Myanmar's smallest state, which is predominantly mountainous and inhabited primarily by the Karenni ethnic group. The Diocese of Loika is located here with around 93,000 Catholic believers. The bishops describes the situation in the area as dramatic. The Burmese army has used heavy weapons, combat aircraft, armored vehicles, and mobile defense systems. As a result, people in both the cities and the countryside are fleeing in different directions. Some fled to the northern part of the state or to areas of Shan State. Among the refugees were old and sick people, people with disabilities, women and some young people who, until a few days ago, were housed in the community center in Loika, where around 80 have already been housed in the past few months, including 10 priests and 16 religious. The number is constantly increasing. They will all now look for other accommodation and relocate to other Catholic parishes or other facilities further away from the fighting, or even to open-air rural areas. But the situation of refugees in the state is really serious, complains the bishop. Due to the intensification of armed conflict in November, more than 80% of the urban and rural population in Kaya State have been displaced and the number of internally displaced people continues to rise, he points out. On November 11, about 800 residents of the city arrived in the Catholic complex of Our Christ the King Cathedral, which was open for accommodation. In total, the number of displaced people, including those who were already there, exceeded 1,300. But unfortunately we were not safe there either, he notes and reports on the impact of the conflict on the ground, which observers believe may have reached a tipping point. With Operation 1027, the rebels of the ethnic militias, allied with the People's Defense Forces, which emerged from the Burmese population after the coup in February 2021, have attacked the Burmese army in various parts of the country, especially in the states of Chin, Shan, Kaya and Rakhine, inflicted heavy defeats and forced them to retreat, and now control, according to independent observers, more than 50% of the country's territory. The Catholic Cathedral complex, which housed refugee families and was one of the last refuges, is now also abandoned and involved in the war. In the diocese, 21 of 41 parishes were affected, and priests and religious also flew from the cities to the countryside or mountains along with the faithful. In the last month alone, humanitarian organizations estimate that more than 200,000 new displaced people have been added across the country. A total of around 2.5 million people have been on the run since the outbreak of the civil war.
Watch our programme every Friday at 7:30 p.m. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Catholic News World channel. God bless.
Please subscribe to Catholic News World's YouTube channel. Thanks and God bless.